I always say that perfection is more about intention than anything else. Otherwise, how do you even begin to define what's good? Designers sometimes forget this, that a good product goes beyond its specifications, its performance. What makes it truly good is whether or not the designer managed to achieve the original intention. And the details, they're just a medium. They're a way to get to that point. This watch gets it. Everyone rejoice, we finally have a blue Speedmaster. Not really blue, but more of a bluish gray. Okay, it's blue in some lights, mostly gray. Definitely twilight blue. The last blue before the sky turns black. Yeah, I'll stick with that. Regardless, I love it. Look, vintage watches aren't going anywhere. We all love vintage watches. We love the styling of vintage watches, the proportions, the size. We just wish that they had a bit more robustness to them. And this new Speedmaster, which is a tribute to the first Omega in space, it is that perfect reissue of a vintage watch. But before we talk about this watch, let's go back a few years. The first Omega to go into space was the Speedmaster reference CK2998 during the 1962 Sigma 7 mission of the Mercury program. This was around 7 years before the Speedmaster Professional would accompany Buzz Aldrin during the first ever moon landing of '69. But the CK2998, produced in 1959, was the first Omega in space worn by astronaut Willy Schirra during the Sigma 7 space mission, and it was quite different from the Speedmaster Professional that was released years later. Now, in 2012, Omega released the closest reissue to this reference, to the original space watch, but it still lacked a few key features that made the original one so iconic. While it did have the straight gaze construction and proportions of the original, it was still lacking in certain areas, both aesthetically and on the movement front. To me, it felt like a strange mix-up between the CK2998 and the Moon watch, something in between. Whereas the original watches had very clear identities that made them two very separate watches. Fortunately, in many ways, this new model doesn't just correct those issues, but also adds some exciting details that we're going to talk about. But first, let's look at the spec sheet. The Speedmaster First Watch in Space 2024 edition comes in a wearable 39.7mm stainless steel case with a thickness of 13.4mm, a lug-to-lug of 48, and a lug width of 19mm because Omega hates you. The watch wears well on my 6.23-inch wrist, bit larger than the Black Bay 58, and definitely has a stronger wrist presence. You get a box-shaped sapphire crystal, which Omega says is shaped like Hazelite. But just remember, while that is true, trying to film this watch was an absolute nightmare. Just don't expect that creamy crescent that you get on the standard Moon watch. The water distance is a hard 50 meters, and the movement inside is the Meta certified in-house caliber 3861. This is a mechanical manual wind caliber that beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour and has a solid 50 hours of power reserve. This is the exact same movement that you get on the current Speedmaster Professionals. But the fact that we're now getting a master chronometer caliber is a good thing because it means that it's highly accurate, highly anti-magnetic, and a lot more impervious to shocks. It's not a beater, but it can take a beating. Even the case back pays tribute to the original design, and I absolutely love it. The flat link bracelet is solid, tapers really well, but with that taper and the polished links on both ends, it makes the watch look more on the dressier side than the toolier side of the Speedy Professional. And that's just my subjective take. The mirror finishing, it just makes it a little bit more elegant, a bit more dressier. So that can be a positive or a negative. But it's certainly a visual differentiator between this and the Moon watch. But the key highlight of this watch is that dial. That bluish gray dial is just amazing. But apart from that, we do get the dot over 90 on the bezel, the vintage applied logo with the vintage Speedmaster text, alpha hands on the hours and minutes, and a faithful dial to the original. And one thing that I believe adds that character to this watch, that makes it pop, that makes it so visually strong is that faux patina, vintage style lume on the hands and markers. That's a debatable thing for sure. But the way that I look at it is that your regular Speedmaster, the Moonwatch or any other model that you have, those are more of everyday watches. This is not trying to replace the original, just like how the white Speedy is not trying to replace the black one. They wear very differently from one another. I feel like this has a very different approach, a very different visual presence. And here's the best part about this watch. It's part of Omega's permanent collection, and to everyone's surprise, isn't outrageously priced either, retailing a little less than the standard Speedmaster Professional Moon watch. I mean, for everyone that loves the Ed White, this is a bargain. It has those similar, touches of refinement, but at a much more palatable price point. Anyway, what do you think of this watch? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps. And I'll see you in the next one.